Okay people, so I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about these episodes or not, because in particular episode 209 and 210 of Boruto are anime original episodes. However, episode 210 in particular was an episode that I felt was worthy of being talked about because they did make a very significant change from the manga to the anime that could impact the future of the story and probably will impact the future of the story depending on how they go about this. So I was like, alright, boom, I want to talk about it. However, definitely if you want to see me talk more about some of the anime original stuff in Boruto, especially the more significant things, definitely drop a like, drop a comment, support the video to let me know that, okay, boom, y'all want me to cover some of these things, because I felt like, again, episode 210 in particular was pretty significant, important, and overall had some value to kind of add into the conversation of the Boruto anime as a whole. So with that being said, people, yeah, let's talk about it.
No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
Okay people, so for starters, let's talk briefly about episode 209. In particular, that episode was really focusing in on Himawari and Kawaki on this little small adventure, and I felt like it did a couple of different things. For starters, it did something with Himawari's character, having her witness something very tragic and ultimately something that should give her some type of character development, assuming that they carry it over, because the anime, you know, from time to time just kind of ignores stuff, but we'll get into that in a little bit. However, Himawari witnessing the death of that wolf that she befriended, that is something huge for a character like her to have to experience death, especially of a companion, even though it was like a wild wolf or whatever, but ultimately that was like a friend to her. So, and also that's something to note, that little badass girl, fam, she's a badass and she got heart. For her to be able to go and befriend a wolf, I don't think Boruto's doing that. Her older brother, I think he's gonna shit himself and try and use some type of jutsu to knock that wolf out. Meanwhile, she's going like, oh, he's just a little cutie. Like, Himawari ain't no joke. They really need to utilize her more in the manga, especially like do something, have it where a villain shows up to the Uzumaki household, maybe Hinata gets hurt, she bugs the hell out and does something at the very least to damage them. I want to see more, and especially moving forward when we get to the time skip, I want to see Himawari do some things. She's always been basically like the female Gohan of the Boruto story, where, you know, how Gohan, like against Cell and anybody else that he would blow up, get angry, and get really strong, she's the same way. And at the end of the day, that's Naruto's daughter, fam. Like, do some good stuff with her, utilize her more. The anime knows that, and the anime treats her like she could be something great. So hopefully they do more with her again moving forward, especially after the time skip. But also something that episode did as well was continuing to build the bond of Kawaki, because now we got Kawaki, for starters, he has like a brotherhood, a brother vibe between him and Boruto. They've spent time together. They're basically like brothers. We know he got a bond with Naruto, a fatherly figure. He's the one that's basically been protecting him. In general, we've seen that relationship develop as well. And then now we're seeing him and Himawari. We only haven't seen really him and Hinata that much. It's just like she makes him a meal and he goes off on his own. Maybe they'll do something down the road, because that'll be nice, also giving Hinata some, you know, screen time. Like, hey, Hinata exists, fam, other than to just make meals and say, oh, everything will be all right. Like, do some more with her. But they did a lot with this episode of just in general showcasing him feeling like a big brother, being there for his quote-unquote little sister, and ultimately just being there to kind of comfort her while she's going through certain things, and kind of developing his love and, you know, just in general the relationship between him and the Uzumaki household. This is a big significant moment for Kawaki to be able to actually add more value to, again, that whole bond, that relationship that I always talk about. Like, they didn't do stuff like that with Sasuke. We didn't have Sasuke. Well, then again, I guess technically Naruto didn't have a whole family to, you know, kind of have a bond with, but ultimately that's going to make it even more heartbreaking, the time where they finally split apart and they're adversaries, Kawaki and Boruto, because he's even being a big brother to little Himawari. And also it was very ironic that he has that nightmare of, like, you know, Konoha is destroyed and all of that jazz, and ultimately he's going to be the one that's going to fulfill that nightmare if everything is correct and what we've seen in the foreshadowing of the beginning of the anime and manga, where he's seemingly the one responsible for destroying the hidden leaf. So it's kind of crazy that he has that nightmare and he's ultimately going to be the one to make that nightmare come true, not Jigen or Ishiki Otsutsuki. But then the episode that really I felt was significant the most to the actual story was episode 210. It more so tackled in on Boro's cult. Now that Boro has been defeated and killed by Boroshiki, Momoshiki possessed Boruto, and just in general the new Team 7, they're kind of just there. So Naruto sends off Konohamaru and Sai, giving them some actual roles and some screen time in the story. Hey! But then it's kind of crazy because Konohamaru, he gets a role, he gets to do something, and yeah, he's going to fumble it and ultimately take another L. Not necessarily by combat, but yeah, everyone dies. But again, we'll talk about that in a second. Because basically, this was wrapping up the whole social and political commentary that Boruto has done that I'm still kind of amazed an anime is doing that. I guess it's more of a worldwide thing, but it's still nevertheless a commentary because this whole monastery, these people that worship Boro, it's pretty much a representation of what's going on in the real world and a lot of the opinions that people have and beliefs that people have in terms of, you know, the thing that's happening everywhere. I don't really want to get into it because then, you know, YouTube be like, even though you're talking about an anime, yeah, fuck you, man. But essentially, it was going deep into it, kind of, you know, these people that they're believing in Boro, but Boro is the one that's actually getting them sick to begin with, and he's not necessarily a deity or related to a deity or anything like that. And then they actually had that girl from early on, which I like that they, you know, continued things. They didn't just have random characters. They had the girl with the brother that we saw Boro kill very early on from the cult and stuff like that, or he wasn't even a part of the cult, she was. So ultimately they carried that over and kind of resolved it. But it was crazy that basically it was demonstrating that these people that they believe so heavily in Boro and the sickness and how he was able to heal them and all that jazz, that they were willing to die in the end. They had a slight, you know, wavering of the heart, so to speak, when they were like, oh, I don't know, because they got the reveal that basically they haven't been in contact with Boro for a while. But then one of the elders was like, yo, fam, it's all good. You just gotta believe, fam. You just gotta believe that this man is legit, bro. Like, yo. Which again just feels like, you know, the whole political and social commentary on everybody and their belief on whether or not what to trust, what to believe, and whatnot. And then ultimately, Delta shows up, which I feel like Delta was one of the best parts of the episode, her showing up and ultimately just destroying the monastery. And yeah, that was the end of this whole Boro's cult, which I feel like it would have been a little bit more interesting and impactful, or exciting for that matter, if they wrapped it up. Obviously, you would have had to change some things, but if they would have wrapped it up with Boro involved, because one of the things that made this whole cult interesting was the fact that it was a Kara member and they were expanding things on that Kara member. So a lot of the episode, they even used the filler OSTs, the anime original OSTs that they usually use for those type of episodes, and it just kind of felt like, okay, you know, Konohamaru and, you know, Sai investigating and whatnot, and ultimately, yeah, if Boro was involved, it would have been a little more exciting, because when Delta shows up and starts blowing shit up and everything, it was exciting, getting more of the Kara members and seeing a little more of what they have to offer and what they think and yada 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 is exciting. So maybe a little missed opportunity there, but ultimately, yeah, seeing a little more Konohamaru and Sai, even though again they took the L because ultimately the mission is a failure, because everybody in the monastery pretty much dies because nobody want to believe them, and ultimately they want to just trust in Boro and his connections to God, and just like what an interesting social commentary. And the big change, because a lot of people are like, okay, Fornev, you promised us that you were going to tell us what was the big change. Well, ultimately, in the manga, even as it stands right now, if I'm not mistaken, Naruto doesn't know that Delta survived the bouts that they have. To this point, he still believes that Delta is dead, if I'm not mistaken. However, in the anime, because Konohamaru and Sai witnessed her attacking the monastery, destroying the church that they were in, they know and they reported it to Naruto that Delta is still alive. So I'm curious how they're going to handle that moving forward. Are they going to ignore it? Because we've seen before that Boruto anime introduces some interesting anime original concepts, and then they kind of ignore it. Like, hey, Urashiki, that was the villain for like 70% of the Boruto anime. When Sasuke goes to the Otsutsuki hideout and all that shit, he just doesn't even think of him, doesn't mention him, as if he never existed, even though Sasuke had countless bouts where he had no chakra and had to fight him. Like, I get they probably wanted to ignore the events of the time travel arc just because it was so controversial, but yeah, Urashiki was in so many episodes and they ignored that. So who's to say that they're not going to ignore this episode where Naruto gets the intel that Delta is still alive, and then down the road he's going to be like, oh shit, I didn't know anything, which would really suck, because like, if you're going to utilize these anime only episodes, utilize them to develop things that are going to be lasting within the story. But we gotta wait and see. Overall episode, interesting episode, wrapping up the cult. Again, I wish there would have been more and would have had Boro somehow, some way in this episode, maybe even if it was just a hologram of him laughing it up like these stupid motherfuckers don't know that I'm playing the shit out of them. Curious what you guys think though. How do you feel about the change that was made in the anime? The fact that Naruto knows now that Delta is still around, that she survived the bout that they had. How do you feel? Do you think they're going to carry that over? Also, what do you think about Himawari's character from last week's episode of her, you know, with the experience of the wolf dying and the relationship between her and Kawaki? Again, they need to do something with Himawari. Damn it, she's an interesting character. That's Naruto's daughter. And your overall thoughts and expectations for the Boruto anime with episode 211 and beyond. Again, if you want to see me talk more of these anime original episodes, definitely drop a like, drop a comment, support the video, so I know y'all want to see more of these. I think next week, though, it's going to be a little more like into the Chocho and Enojin. I know I saw Kakashi in there, and I want to say it's supposed to have some interesting bits, but I'm not too sure about talking about that one. But I know there's a few anime original episodes, so maybe here and there I'll chime in if there's something interesting to talk about. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links are in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, boy. Have an awesome day. Peace in. And yeah, Konohamaru took another L. No. Interesting stuff. The end of Boro's cult. The end of Boro. He didn't turn out to be that boring after all in the anime at the very least. Have an awesome one.